Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We have more gaming and PlayStation news, rumours and leaks to go over. If you enjoyed today's video, please show your support by hitting that like button. Over the past few years, Capcom has been on a roll with Resident Evil remakes. Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3 and most recently Resident Evil 4 have all been rebuilt from the ground up with modern graphics, new controls and a more cinematic feel. Not only have they been critically praised, they've also sold millions of copies each. These remakes have done two big things for Capcom. Firstly, they've introduced the classic stories to an entirely new audience who have never played the original games. And secondly, they've brought back old fans who wanted to experience the games again, but with a fresh feel, fresh look, fresh gameplay, and fresh visuals. The strategy is working for Capcom, so it's no surprise that Capcom is planning even more Resident Evil remakes. And that brings us to the latest leaks. According to a reliable leaker, Capcom is quietly working on two big remakes, Resident Evil Code Veronica and Resident Evil 0. These aren't just rumors pulled out of thin air. The source is Mr. Resident Evil himself, Dusk Golem, also known as the AestheticGamer. He's a well-known insider with a solid history of getting Resident Evil news correct before it's official. His track record, pretty accurate. In fact, sources at IGN and VGC have both backed up what he's been saying. According to the leaks, both remakes are aiming for a release somewhere in 2027 or 2028. No confirmation yet on which one will drop first, but if the leaks are on point, both projects are very deep in development right now. And Capcom, of course, hasn't come out and named them yet. The only official statement we've had is that more remakes are coming. That's it. No titles, no release dates. Now, Resident Evil 0 is actually a prequel to the original Resident Evil game. It takes place just 24 hours before the events of the first game, during the early stages of the T-virus outbreak in the Arklay Mountains. You play as Rebecca Chambers, the young medic of STAR's Bravo team, and Billy Cohen, an escaped convict with a mysterious past. The two form an uneasy partnership as they uncover the horrors leading into the mansion incident from Resident Evil 1. Resident Evil 0 originally came out in 2002 for the Nintendo GameCube. It was known for its unique partner zapping system where you could switch between Rebecca and Billy instantly to solve puzzles and fight enemies. It was also the last main Resident Evil game to use the classic pre-rendered background style before the series moved over to having fully 3D rendered environments. Resident Evil Code Veronica, on the other hand, is a strange one. It originally had weak sales when it first launched. However, the game received critical acclaim and is considered amongst one of the best Resident Evil games. It's set 3 months after the events of Resident Evil 2 and 3. And the game follows the story of Claire Redfield as she gets captured by Umbrella and sent to a remote prison island. Of course, in true Resident Evil fashion, the viral outbreak turns the whole place into chaos. Eventually, the story shifts to an Antarctic facility, giving the game one of the most varied settings in the series. Code Veronica first launched, I think it was in 2000, on the Sega Dreamcast. It was actually the first Resident Evil to ditch pre-rendered backgrounds entirely and use full 3D environments. At the time, that was a big deal. It allowed for more dynamic camera angles and better atmosphere. Despite being loved by many fans, Code Veronica never really had a proper remake, only a few re-releases and minor upgrades. That's why this leak is so exciting for long-time Resident Evil players. A full modern remake would give it the same treatment we've seen with Resident Evil 2, 3 and 4. Now, Dusk Golem hasn't just been talking about the remakes, he's also shared news on Resident Evil Requiem or Resident Evil 9, which is the next mainline game in the series. And according to him, Requiem will wrap up the current storyline that began with Resident Evil 7 and continued through Resident Evil Village. After that, future Resident Evil games might jump to different points in time, exploring entirely new story arcs, and making the game at different points in time or exploring new story arcs may be something Capcom are looking at, because the development of these games takes years, and by the time a new game releases, the in-universe timeline can end up way ahead of where the last one left off. So shifting to different eras in the franchise gives Capcom more freedom and fresh stories to tell. The game after Requiem is already being planned. Right now, it's looking like a 2029 or 2030 release, and according to the leaks, It will be a full mainline story, not a spin-off or a side project. It's going to be a main game for Resident Evil. One extra bit of detail about the Resident Evil 0 remake is that it had a bit of a rocky road in development. At some point, Capcom decided to restart the entire project from scratch. That reset, along with similar delays for Resident Evil 9, means both titles are coming out later than originally intended. Before Resident Evil 9 became the game it is today, it was actually planned as an open-world multiplayer experience. Capcom saw the light, thankfully, and eventually scrapped that approach and refocused it into the more traditional style Resident Evil survival horror game that we know. As for Resident Evil 9's plot, leaks say there's an early twist that Capcom is keeping tightly under wraps. Apparently, it's a moment they don't want to spoil under any circumstance. So if you want to go in fresh, maybe avoid digging too deep online. So to sum it up, 2 long-awaited remakes, a big finale to the current saga, and a brand new Resident Evil game planned for the end of the decade. If you've been waiting for more survival horror goodness, the next few years are going to be very, very exciting, especially if you're a fan of the Resident Evil games. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments and let's move on. The hype surrounding Ghost of Yotei is getting more and more exciting, and it's shaping up to be one of the most anticipated PlayStation releases of the year. The game comes out in October, and bit by bit, Sucker Punch has been giving us a closer look at the weapons, enemies, and the world that we are going to be exploring. Last week, we got a short gameplay clip showing the AestheticGamer, which is the sickle and chain weapon. And now, Sucker Punch have released a new short gameplay trailer demoing the Yari. Now, the Yari is a type of Japanese spear, and from the trailer scene, it's just as deadly as the AestheticGamer, but with a clear advantage, and that's its range. In the new footage, Atsu, who's the game's main character, charges a group of enemies on the bridge, and within 30 seconds, every single one of them is on the ground. It's quick, brutal, and efficient. The longer reach of the Yari means you can keep enemies at a safer distance, but still hit hard. Perfect for dealing with crowds or charging straight through enemy lines. And here's the thing, Sucker Punch isn't stopping with just these 2 weapon showcases. We already know there are more weapons to come. Dual swords, the heavy udachi, and of course the traditional katana. Plus, Atsu has ranged weapons too, so don't be surprised if we get more videos each week highlighting the bows, the throwing weapons, and even more surprises before launch. But Ghost of Yotei isn't just about the weapons, it's about the journey. And as you probably know by now, the game takes place in Japan's Hokkaido region, a setting we rarely see explored in games at this scale. You'll be playing as Atsu, a warrior on a mission to take down a group known as the Yotei 6. 6 powerful and dangerous figures who each have their own territory, fighting style, and personality. Thanks to new concept art uploaded to the game's official PlayStation page, 5 of the Yotei 6 are now visible and available to see. 1, though, is still being kept a secret, probably to surprise us later. It could be some kind of a twist in the story, so keep an eye on that one. Each design is completely unique. The Kitsune stands out immediately with silver shoulder armor and chainmail that wouldn't look out of place in a Mortal Kombat game. Then there's the snake, tall, thin, hunched forward, giving off an unsettling presence before even raising a weapon. Lord Saito brings the opposite energy, heavily armored, detailed down to the smallest plating, looking like a walking fortress. This is where Sucker Punch's art team really shines. The Ghost of Tsushima designs were already praised for their authenticity and style, and it looks like they've raised the bar again, but this time for Ghost of Yotei. The PlayStation site didn't drop a ton of new gameplay details, but it did remind us of one key feature, and that's the camping system. Between battles, you'll be able to stop, set up camp, cook meals, and even invite traveling merchants to trade with you. It sounds like these quiet moments between missions will give you a break from the action while also letting you prepare for the next big fight. So far, Ghost of Yotei looks like a mix of sharp, fast-paced combat and an atmospheric living world. If the Yotei 6 fights are as memorable as their designs, this could be one of Sucker Punch's best ever games. Personally, my hype level for this game is off the charts. Easily my most anticipated game right now is Ghost of Yotei. Ever since playing through Ghost of Tsushima and having played through it several times, I've been itching to get back into this type of game, the location and that time period. And games like Rise of Ronin and Assassin's Creed were absolutely fine, had a great time. They never really scratched the itch left by Ghost of Tsushima. That game just hit on a different level, so I cannot wait to experience Ghost of Yotei. Guys, let me know your thoughts. Let's move on. Exciting news if you're a Capcom fan. Capcom is making a big move at this year's New York Comic Con. On October the 10th, the Japanese publisher is hosting a massive 90-minute Capcom presentation panel. And they're not holding back. They've already said it's going to cover all of their recent and upcoming releases. So this isn't some small side event. It's happening right on the main stage at 3:45 p.m. Pacific time. Very important, especially if you're in the UK. For fans around the world, that means, as I've said, 3:45 p.m. That's North America, West Coast, 6:45 Eastern Time, US. Unfortunately, that's 11:45 p.m. for us folk in the UK. So I might not be able to stream this on the channel unless I book the following day off work. Let's see. I'll decide that closer to the event. And as for Japan, well, that's 7:45 a.m. the following day. If you can't be there in person, the event will be streamed online, similar to the Capcom Spotlight event. We know some big names are already in the pipeline for a reveal and gameplay. That's Resident Evil Requiem, Pragmata, and Onimusha Way of the Sword will all get big updates at the event. And let's not forget about Monster Hunter Wilds and ongoing updates for Street Fighter 6, which will all have some kind of presence at the Comic-Con event. Now, given the excitement around the Devil May Cry anime adaptation, it wouldn't be shocking if Capcom uses this moment to tease a new game in that series. And honestly, we're long overdue a brand new Mega Man title as well. This panel could be the perfect time to make it happen. Now, because this is New York Comic-Con, it's not just going to be about the games. Capcom has a huge presence in comics, manga, and collectibles, so expect to see announcements for new art books, figurines, merchandise, and maybe even limited edition tie-ins. That's one thing people sometimes forget. These big publisher panels are not always wall-to-wall gameplay. We might see behind the scenes look at some artwork, some design, and maybe even how Capcom's different divisions from games to anime to publishing are all working together on future projects. But still, 90 minutes is a long time. Even with the merchandise and side announcements, you can bet there's going to be plenty of gameplay footage, trailers, and maybe a few surprises to keep fans talking well after the show events. The question is, will Capcom play it safe and stick to the games we've already seen and know about? Or will they drop one of those huge one more thing moments right at the end? Let me know your thoughts, and let's move on. Now, Shawn Layden has caused a little bit of controversy with some of his comments over the last few days. The former chairman of PlayStation's Worldwide Studios has never been shy about his opinions, and in a recent conversation with GamesIndustry.biz, he made it clear he's not a fan of the Netflix for games approach. He pointed directly at services like Gamepass, saying he sees them as a danger for the industry. Now, the debate around Game Pass has been going on for many years. Is it profitable? Is it not profitable? Is it sustainable? And Layden says those are not even the right questions to be asking. In his view, numbers can be massaged, right? Numbers can be made to look good on paper if a company really wants them to. But the real problem, he argued, is what it does to developers. Traditionally, a studio puts a game out on the market, hope it performs well, and shares in the profits if it does, which allows them to reinvest those profits, that money, into the studio, help grow the studio, work on a sequel while also be able to maybe simultaneously or tentatively make a start on a new IP, start planning on a new game. This is how these studios grow from one team to two and beyond. These are amazing things that can happen when games sell relatively well. They allow the studios and developers to grow. However, under a subscription model, Layden says it's more like the studio is being paid a fixed wage to deliver a product, and then it gets locked away in the services library. That, he warns, can strip away the creative and financial incentives that drive developers to push boundaries, because the developers are not being paid to push boundaries, they're being paid to make content for a subscription service, a service that just needs feeding. Quality in that context doesn't really matter. It's all about the quantity. And as we've seen from various recent reports, the vast majority of gamers don't even play the full games on Game Pass, and it's disheartening for the developers. Shawn Layden went as far as to call it a form of wage slavery for game creators. Strong words, but it's clear he believes the risk is real. And Layden has been consistent about voicing his concerns over the direction of the industry. In an interview earlier this year, he also shared his thoughts on the still unannounced PlayStation 6. Despite the push towards digital sales, he doesn't think the next console will ditch physical discs entirely. And in a separate conversation, he explained one of the reasons why he left Sony is that he didn't agree with their growing focus on live service games. Looking at the market now, some of those big live service projects that were greenlit many years ago have already been quietly scaled back or completely cancelled. Sony's big mistake was letting go or allowing Shawn Layden to leave the business. They need to do whatever they can to bring him back into the fold and get him back in a role with oversight on all single-player AAA games in development for Sony first-party studios. This is where Shawn Layden flourished, and ironically enough, it's when PlayStation delivered their best ever single-player lineup of games. Guys, let me know your thoughts. Let's move on. We're just weeks away from the release of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, and there's been an important update about its online mode called Fox Hunt. The official Japanese Metal Gear X account has confirmed that there will be no crossplay between platforms. So if you're on PlayStation, you're only going to be playing with players on PlayStation. Same for Xbox, same for PC. You're only going to be playing with players who buy the game on that platform. For those who don't know, Fox Hunt is a multiplayer mode that builds on ideas from Metal Gear Online. It takes the camouflage and survival mechanics of Snake Eater and mixes them into a competitive hide-and-seek style match. Think stealth gameplay, but with the tension of knowing another player is hunting you down. Metal Gear fans will remember Metal Gear Online from the subsistence version of Snake Eater and later from Metal Gear Solid 4. Fox Hunt is essentially an evolution of that idea with updated mechanics or modern gameplay. As for the main game, Metal Gear Solid Delta is a full ground-up remake of the 2004 classic. It keeps the original voice performances, but everything else, character models, environments, lighting, has all been completely overhauled. You'll also be able to choose between classic controls or a more modern control scheme, similar to Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. It's worth noting that while Hideo Kojima was the creative mastermind behind the original Snake Eater, he has publicly said he won't be playing the remake. Whether that's out of personal choice or professional distance, it's still a reminder that this is a Konami-led project, sadly, without Hideo Kojima's direct involvement. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments about the content discussed in the video today, and I'll catch you on the next video.